Hi, I'm Venessa Giunta. I am an author and an editor and an all-around like to talk about things person and a little awkward sometimes. One of my favorite things to do is talk to authors, right? I love talking to authors about their process, their writing, their careers, their marketing, all those things. And I really love just sitting down and just talking about stuff. I mean, communication is my love language. So that's really what I had in mind. I really wanted a situation where I could just have a conversation with somebody. So, and a conversation and a cocktail is really all about us hanging out and drinking together and talking about the stuff. Woo! And there it is, the intro. And here we are, our very, very, very first episode. And we're here with Bobby Nash. He's one of my favorite people that I never get enough time to actually talk to. So, which is why I brought you here, because, you know, we see each other at cons and we're like, woo, woo.
Yeah,
hi,
yes,
woo.
we've learned the art of convention conversation, which if you've never done it is very weird. It starts out, hey, did you hear about such and such and such? Okay, be back. An hour later, you come back. So, like I was saying, and you have one conversation over multiple days,
Yes.
and hope you don't forget where you were in the conversation.
Yes, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. What are you drinking tonight?
I went simple. I have tea.
Okay.
And then when
choice.
it's just regular, like, what is it? Orange Pico or whatever
Ooh,
comes in
yeah.
the tea bags.
Yes.
And decaf. I decided to go decaf, which is weird because as soon as that cup is finished, I'm going to switch to Mountain Dew. So it's
yeah.
that's
All right.
that's my hard drink of choice is Mountain Dew.
Yeah, that is a hard drink.
Yeah.
I am drinking an Arnold Palmertini, which is sweet tea, vodka, and lemonade. And I am drinking.
I've got a third of that.
See? I'm drinking out of my Dragon Con cup.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I don't have one of those.
Yes, because you're not a volunteer. See?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Mine's one I made for one of my characters that I sell in my store.
Yes. Which character is that?
This is Abraham Snow for the
That's
Snow
the
series.
one I thought it was.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I made them put in my store. I figured I was always drinking like out of the bottle, and I'm like, I'm tired of like giving Pepsi free promotions. So I switched to my own cup.
Author, promote thyself.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about like early writing. So give us your origin story. One of the podcasts that I listened to in the past, they used to say, what was your radioactive spider bite? So what is your origin story as far as writing?
Okay. Sorry, I had to laugh for a second. I saw Carol's I volunteered to drink comment. That was hilarious.
Well, good. We have a pinch drinker. I love it.
So when I was a kid, I discovered comic books. Mm-hmm. Well, first I discovered Spider-Man through cartoons, which led to comics. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with the medium of comics. With, oh my God, you can tell stories this way. And my grand dream was to be a comic book artist. That's where I knew that would be my future. I'm going to draw comics. Turns out I'm not that good. I can doodle. I can do that kind of stuff. I can do sketches or whatever, but doing actual storytelling panel to panel consistently and telling a good story and making it look good, turns out my skill levels, stops a little short. But I started writing stories to have things to draw. Mm-hmm. And I had other friends who were wanting to be comic book artists as well, who started coming to me going, hey, I would like for you to write something for me. And so that's kind of where it started. But I still held on to that dream of being an artist as well. And I had a good friend of mine who set me down one day, and I guess it was just, he picked the right day because I was in the mindset to hear it. Mm-hmm. But he gave me some tough love. It says, you're never going to be a professional comic book artist. He said, you're just not. He says, I'm not trying to discourage you, but I'm just saying, if you were to pick one and focus on it, it could be the art if you want, or it could be the writing. But if you pick one, I think you'll get better at one of them.
Right.
And right now you're splitting all your focus, and
Mhm.
you're just kind of there.
That's good.
And
That's good advice, right?
yeah, and it was one of those days where I heard it and didn't get pissed off that I heard it. And so I kind of took it to heart, and I was like, he's right. And I took a hard look at my art and says, you know what, he's right. I'm never going to be a comic book artist. I said, well, let me focus on this writing thing and see how that goes. And I started just focusing on that. And within 4 or 5 years, I sold my first professional comic book story.
Wow.
So yeah, and then it was a few years into that, I was like, I'm gonna write a novel. It's been all downhill after that, because you know
That's
how
so
it is.
funny. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the comics really were the gateway to
I
storytelling.
thought you were a novel writer before you were a comic writer.
No,
I didn't
comics
realize
first,
it was
yeah.
the other way around. That's so cool.
Yeah, so and it's weird too. They use very different creative muscles.
I was going to ask you about that, like what the difference is to you
Yeah.
between the two.
Because when you write novels or short stories, you as the writer are painting everything.
Right.
I have to give you everything from what it looks like, smells like, feels like, how they're dressed, the colors, and that takes a certain style when you're writing. With comics, the vast majority of what I write, the reader never sees. I write a lot of instructional bits for the artist.
Like the stage direction, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Like, panel 1, it's a living room. Now there's 2 ways of doing it. If you don't know who you're working with, you can kind of overwrite it. It's like, make sure there's a couch, 2 chairs, whatever. If you trust the artist or you know the artist and you know that they know this already, you just say it's a living room and you let them go.
Gotcha.
But I will put in things like, Bobby and Venessa are in the living room and they're going to have a conversation. Somewhere in there, we need to see a gun because Vanessa's going to shoot Bobby on the next page.
I'm such a bitch.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But you also give things, to the artist, like what they're feeling. Is Vanessa pissed off? Is she faking being happy? Is this a plot, or is this going to be a spur of the moment thing when she shoots? So there's all those things that you're putting in there, and then the artist goes in and interprets what I've said. Here's kind of what's happening, and the artist goes in and interprets it and puts it together on the page, and then I come back and go, and I usually give them the dialogue up front too, just so they know what I'm thinking in terms of here's what the panel's gonna look like. But then that'll come back, and there are times where the artist will put things that can allow me to either take out dialogue, sometimes just put dialogue in, just to keep that, to make the flow. But your artist can do things with the art that gets across the point that you were getting across in dialogue, and you can lose it. Which, a comic being a very art heavy medium,
right?
The more art you see, the better. So yeah, so when you find an artist that you click with, or artists, because sometimes it's more than one, when you find a creative team that you click with, there's a type of magic that kind of happens between, what I get back from the artist is, sorry, I talk with my hands. Sorry.
No, I'm Italian. You tie my hands up, I can't even talk. Yeah, so I feel you on that.
But it's but whatever I get back from the artist is never what I expect. It's never how I saw it in my head. Even though they're telling the story, it's never how I saw it in my head. But it's better. It's there's something cool, and I kind of get that feeling that I hope the reader gets when they see those pages for the first time. It's like, ooh, I wonder what happens next, or ooh, I love the way they did this, or because I like to be very. It's a partnership. I like to be very collaborative, I guess is the right word. Because I'll say this panel's got 5 panels, blah, blah, blah. Here it all is. But I also like it to be open to where if the artist goes, you know what, you wrote 5, but it'll look so much better at 6. We can split this one into 2. And I'm like, great, let's, whatever we have to do to make it the best possible story we can. And so that teamwork gives you something that's very different than when
Mm.
I'm writing it. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't get there, it's because I screwed it up. You
You can
know,
you have somebody else
or
to blame.
yeah, I got somebody else to blame. Or if I overwrite a novel, and I put too much detail, again, it's all on me.
Right.
This way, you've also got that extra set of eyes
Yeah, you're
going.
like checking each other.
Yeah, it's like, oh, can we do this? Can we move this here?
Mhm.
I could draw it this way, but then this dialogue box is in the wrong place. Can we move? So there's a lot of that back and forth that helps, and I think we get a better product out of it a lot of times. When you and your artist really click,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so it's a wonderful way to work. It's like I said, it's very different creative muscles too,
Mhm.
because there could be a big periods of time where I'm not working on it. I come up with the script, it goes away, it could be gone for a month, 2, 3,
Mhm.
4, depending on who you're working for. Then it comes back to me. Then I do a little more. It goes off to the letterer, the inker, all those,
Mhm.
the colorist, those various steps. It may be another few months before it comes back to me. So I'm doing other stuff. And so when it comes back, it's almost new when it comes back to me each time because it's been away for a while.
Right.
So,
That's cool because when you're advising like authors, I'm a professional editor, right? So
mhm,
when I'm advising authors, they're like, "Oh, when should I do my revisions and stuff?" No, you need to let it sit for a little while because you need to be like away from it. So that kind of has that
mhm,
all built into it.
right, right.
So that's really cool.
Yeah,
I
and,
love that.
and in each of those steps, and I mean, and it can vary depending on who you're working with. If your
Mhm.
artist is penciling it, inking it, and coloring it, that's one person.
Right.
It could be three different people. It
Mm.
could be more than three different people, depending on who you're working for, the timing of the deadline, all these things. So there's a lot of steps and a lot of different hands that touch it. There's an editor at each stage.
Mhm.
It's usually the same editor, but I mean, someone is like they approve my plot, then they approve my script, then they
Mhm.
approve the pencils, then they approve the inks. So there's steps,
Mhm.
and so the editor is really in a comic. The editor is the person that's probably touching it the most
Mm.
because
Yeah.
they're looking at each step because you don't want to get to the book's done, it's colored, it's lettered, and go, oh, this doesn't work. We need to change that
Right.
because the art takes more time. I mean, it's real easy for me to go, panel 1, 10,000 soldiers charge over the hill. The artist, that's going to take a minute more than what it took me to write that. So, and then each artist, it's a process. And so
Mhm.
if you need a change, they'll look at the pencils and go, oh, we need to make a change here. It's easier than waiting till we've got to the end of the process and trying
Oh,
to
sure.
fix things because
Yeah.
a lot of times it's too late.
Right.
You
Because I
know.
imagine once you have like all the color, all the actual, lines and stuff like that, like all of that in there,
Mhm.
I can't imagine like having to go back and like then change all that. That
Well,
would be,
it's a little easier probably today than it used to be because
oh,
all of it's
sure.
digital.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like in the old days,
In the old
when
days.
it was all done on paper, you can see some original art where they've cut and pasted another panel over top of
Hmm.
one
Yeah.
because something had to change deep into the process.
Right.
And so depending on who you're working for, it could be, because if you get up to corporate comics like Marvel or DC, you're not just writing your book. You also go, oh yeah, we got a crossover. We got to work that in, or we got to
Right.
do a panel. Batman's in Metropolis. We got to do a panel that shows what Superman's doing. So there are things like that that may come in
Mhm.
later that you have to slot in. So, but yeah, it's a fun process. I love it. I'm doing some right now. Some comics. I'm writing several comics this year, and it's a lot of fun. And I have a great time. You know, pacing it because again it's very different.
Mhm.
It's you're taking snapshots of the action. So whereas in a novel you talk about the whole process of moving from A to B,
Right.
in the comics you're at A, you're at B. It's kind of like in a novel, if we were going to get into a rocket ship and fly to Mars, we would get in the rocket ship, we'd go through the countdown, the go no go, we'd take
Yeah.
off, we'd see the launch, we'd get, in a comic you go, the rocket launches, panel 2, rocket lands on Mars.
Yes.
You can do those kind of things. And
Mhm.
so yeah, you don't do as many like big monologues or big, you keep the because again, it's a very art heavy medium. So
Yeah.
big speeches like that you might do in your novels. You don't really do those in comics unless they're necessary.
Right.
Well,
because it seems like a much more fast-paced medium.
mm-hmm.
It's interesting because it's almost like it's in some ways a meld between visual media like TV and movies and like written media
Mm-hmm.
like novels. It's kind of like a little bit of a mishmash, and then it has its own set of rules and things as well. But because like if you're writing a novel, you've got to get a lot of things on the page. If it's not on the page, it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
In most cases. Whereas in TV and the movies, you can manipulate the media to get across what you're trying to get across without it, like in a different way because it's visual, right?
Right, because you have to, like with comics, you have to be more careful of what is on each page.
Mhm.
Whereas if I'm writing a novel, it doesn't really matter what page the monster jumps out at you because you're not reading ahead, you don't see it. In a comic, you see 2 pages at one time.
Oh yeah.
So, you want your scares, your jump turns, or your reveals to be page turn reveals. So when you turn, you've read page 3, you turn, you want your scares to be on page 4 because when you're reading page 2, you can see page 3.
Yes, that's something I didn't grow up on comics or anything like that. When I was in high school, I had a friend who was really into the fantasy type comics, and he kind of turned me on to a couple that are very like what was the elfy one?
Oh, ElfQuest?
Was it ElfQuest? Yes,
ElfQuest,
it was ElfQuest. Yeah, it was ElfQuest, and then there was one called A Distant Soil that we used to call A Faraway Dirt, but that had the most beautiful artwork, and that's really the extent of my comicness. But
that was Colleen Doran did the A Distant Soil.
That was
then
beautiful.
Richard and Wendy Peeney did ElfQuest.
Yeah.
Saw them at DragonCon last weekend.
Yay. So. Awesome. Speaking of DragonCon, I was trying to think of where we actually met the first time. You've been such a constant in my convention. So it had to have been DragonCon.
It probably was. I've been doing DragonCon for so long. My first DragonCon was 1989. It's the year I graduated high school.
That was like the 3rd year of DragonCon.
Yeah.
Wow.
And because my parents wouldn't let me do any of that stuff, when I was, but once I was out of high school, they're like, well, you do what you want. But back in those days too, I just I'd go a day, I didn't stay or anything like that. But so from 1989 till this year, I've only missed 1 year, and that was last year.
Oh.
So to me, it becomes it's one big giant DragonCon. They do. I remember things that happen. I couldn't tell you what year.
Them in the year.
Yeah, right. No, there's no way. It just melds. But what I do remember about that first year was it was in one hotel, and it didn't take up the entire hotel. There was something else going on that weekend in the hotel as well. And I remember walking in, and this was the second convention I'd been to because we'd gone to Fantasy Fair, the Atlanta Fantasy Fair. So I went and I go in and I walk in, and I remember going, I'm coming up the escalators, and there it is. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like the biggest thing I've ever seen. That entire
such a baby.
Yeah, that entire convention would fit in the comic room now. It is a monster, but it's our monster,
That's right.
Yeah, who would, if you'd have told me back then that one day this will take over, 5 hotels, 2 convention centers, I wouldn't have believed it.
And then sell out all the hotels in like a 5-mile radius. So it's my home show. I love it. I live here in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta. Sorry, it never fails. Put me in front of a microphone, I'll start belching. Are you drinking the Mountain Dew now?
No, not yet. Still almost done with the tea. But it just never fails. Put me in front of a microphone. That will happen.
I'm like that. I yawn on my Twitch streams when I'm doing we do sprints and things, I'll be chatting or whatever, and all of a sudden I'll yawn. I'll be like, y'all.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There's just something about knowing you're on camera or knowing you're being recorded. It's either that or cough, one of the two.
Yes. Yes.
But
Never
I
done
used
that.
to just put in cough drops just to be on the safe side. But they don't really pair well with Mountain Dew.
Yeah, no. Maybe the cherry ones.
Yeah, yeah. Look, we just made somebody on.
You're welcome, Carol.
So, but yeah, so it was. But no, I honestly, I'm sitting there trying to think. I honestly don't remember exactly. Hey, Charles, I don't remember exactly where. I'm sure it was Dragon.
It had to have been Dragon Con, I think.
Okay, it's amazing too how many people in my life came from me meeting them at Dragon Con.
So many.
Yeah, it's I've made a lot of like lifelong friends, from doing these shows, and
Yeah, because
that's
you do a lot. You do
yeah.
a ton of conventions and different shows, even like small one-day shows. What does your year look like a typical year? Like how many shows do you do?
Before the
In the
world
before
went to hell.
times.
Yeah, before the apocalypse, I used to do about 2 to 3 events a month. They weren't
Ooh.
all cons, but they would be some
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
it could be a book signing or going to
Mhm.
meet a writer's group or whatever,
Right.
or a con, or so at least 3 things a month.
Mhm.
Since, the world went to hell, I've backed off a bit.
Mhm.
Monetary reasons, part of it,
Yeah.
because I think like all of us, sales kind of
Yeah.
during all this, and so there was some lean times. But the one thing that the quarantine taught me, the one thing that worked out for me for the quarantine, I realized how productive I could be if I was home every weekend.
Ah.
I feel very fortunate because I have friends that were like, I accomplished nothing during that. I just could not make myself do it. Whereas it was the most productive 2 years I've had in a while.
Wow.
Partly because that kept me from going insane.
Yeah.
There was that, because it would be so easy to either doom scroll on the internet
Right.
all day or veg out in front of the TV all day. I decided, no, make yourself work. And so I would, every day I was at the desk doing the work, or
You and
almost
Brandon
every day.
Sanderson.
Yeah. So so that helped keep me busy,
Mhm.
and doing stuff like this, the virtual panels. There
Oh
was
yeah,
quite a
that
few
was
of those.
great.
Those were wonderful. I could at least talk and see people, and it was great to talk to other, to people I'm not seeing at conventions.
Mhm.
And so that was good. And then the other thing that came out of it, again, to keep us from going stir crazy, my dad and I would get in the car and just drive. We
Yes.
didn't go anywhere to where we got out around people. We would just throw some food and drink in the car, hit the road.
Yeah, like your Sunday drive, your
Yeah,
Sunday afternoon drive with the
yeah,
picnic in the field, the
yeah.
thing.
And we would do it during the week, and so it was so there was
Right.
no crowds, and so we would just pick a direction and go. And that also helped us. It got us out of the house.
Yeah.
And I'm taking photos as we're going, so I'm like, my dad kind of got a kick out of it. I'd be like, "Hey, that's a cool location. I bet we could hide a body in there." And so that became an ongoing thing. And we would drive through areas I'd never been before, hadn't been in a long time, and I would go, "Ooh, I could set this here." Like the whole 6 book of Snow, the location, I had an idea for a location, but I was just going to make something up. And we drove past this area, and I was like, it'll be this. And I took a bunch of pictures. And so I set it in that specific area. I had the photos to go back and look over. So it was great. I
Oh,
had and all this,
cool.
yeah. And I can write that trip off. No.
That's right. Exactly. Totally can. Yeah, it's funny because like I set my pretty much the majority of my books and things are set in and around Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny, after Dragon Con, the Tuesday after Dragon Con, a couple friends and we went to Little Five Points for like a late lunch, early dinner thing. And we parked in the parking lot that is the opening scene of my first novel.
Mhm.
So I was like, look, this is where she killed the dude. Right
In-
there. We literally parked in the spot
Mhm.
that she killed the dude.
In Snowfalls, the first book in my Snow series, he comes back to Atlanta after a while, and he goes to a meeting at the Marriott Marquis. And there is a sniper, an assassin that tries to kill somebody at the meeting. He's chasing the assassin through the tunnels. And it's like, anybody that reads this is going to know. If they've been here,
The
they're
habit
going to know.
trails?
Yes.
Yes.
And so if they don't, it still works, but it's like a little Easter egg for the people that, yeah. So
those are my favorite. Those are some of my favorite things in books when they're set in places I'm familiar with. Like, oh my God, I've been there. I love that. Yeah. As a reader, I love that.
I got such a big kick out of watching the movie Baby Driver, because when he's running from the cops and he gets out of the car and he's on foot, he runs through the Peachtree Mall food court where we have Dragon Con every year. And I'm like, I know where he is.
That's hilarious. I haven't seen that, so now I'm gonna have to watch it just because I want to.
Yeah, he gets out of his car. The cops are chasing him, and he's running through, going into the little stores and trying to get away from the cops. And I'm like, yep, I know where that escalator is. Oh, I know where,
I got an ice cream cone at the Dairy Queen. That's hilarious. I love that. Well, speaking of movies, you're also an actor. It's like there's nothing you don't do, Bobby. It's insane. So tell me about how you got into acting. Have you always wanted to be an actor? How did that happen?
I thought it would be fun to do. I am not what you'd call it. I'm never going to win an Academy Award, or I got started. In 2009, I got laid off from my day job, and I said, you know what? This will be a great time to write full time and try to make that work. But I had friends that were doing extra background work. And so a few of them were like, hey, you should do this every once in a while. It's a couple $100 in your pocket. It's a night's work. And so I applied to a couple and got them. The first couple I didn't do anything. It was weird. I was just there all night. They never used me, but I got paid. I got to watch how it worked because it was TV. With movies, they tend to segregate you in another trailer until they need you, or in another building. With TV, you just go sit over there so I can watch.
Oh, that's cool.
So I learned a lot about how TV is made, how shots are set up, how the actors, do their thing and all this. And so I was fascinated. It's just, it was a totally new world to me. And so I started applying to more of those, and I got into a couple of those. Then I did something, and I don't know what I did that got me on their radar, but I got on a casting company's radar where if you needed an angry fat guy, I was your man. And
that's hilarious because, I don't think I've ever seen you angry. You're just so freaking laid back.
No, I guess I fake it really well, but I did that for several things where we just need an angry fat guy to come in here and beat up and push around the star of the movie. I'm like, okay. So I don't know where it came from. It just sort of happened. And, and then, so I did that for a while. And then, during the pandemic, that kind of went away. I did a couple of movies, small movies where I had roles or dialogue, dialogue and more stuff to do. That was fun. I've been killed in a horror movie,
life goals.
Yeah, I think every actor does that at one point in their life. They get murdered in a horror movie, and so I did that. It's weird. My friends were making it. I have some actor friends, and they were making this movie, and they wrote a role for me. I still had to audition, but it was like, this is yours. I'm like, okay. And so I studied, learned my lines, knew how I was going to get killed. I'd practiced the action of what was going to happen to me. I get there and they're like, yeah, so we gave your death scene to somebody else. So here's what we're going to do with you. So I had to learn a whole new one, but it still worked. I mean, we made it work. And actually I got to fight the killer. So I came out better, I think, with the new one. But but that was fun. I got to do a lot of. It was there was a lot of comedy in that too. We were doing the movie's called Camp Massacre, but when I was filming it, it was called Fat Chance. It was about a murder and a Biggest Loser style reality show.
Oh,
So we got to do a lot of comedy. There's a lot of comedy in there because none of us were like, you don't put the most gifted people in those shit. You put people personalities. And
yes.
so I actually was the character I played worked on the crew, and they kick one of the contestants out because this skinny guy showed up who just needed to lose 5 pounds. And they made him leave, and so the director pulls me. I'm working. I'm the assistant to the producer, and they make me do it and so then I get killed. So, but yeah, it was hard. Got to do a lot of running and physical stuff, and tripping and falling, and I had a fight scene, and yeah, it was just so much fun stuff to do. And the cast, we really bonded. We filmed in a hunting cabin in Alabama. This place was so off the grid, GPS could not find it.
Ooh, I've been to places like that.
Yeah, so, and it was a
Perfect place to
spooky,
get murdered.
yeah, it was a very spooky looking building because it was just, it was perfect setting. But because we were in this tiny little town that rolls up at dusk, we bonded because we were all together all the time. And I was
Yeah,
there for a
nothing else
week.
to do.
Yeah, I was there for a week. I know they were there longer, but we had a blast. And there was one scene in the movie where we're all together because everything else we had filmed, it was just a few of us here, a few of us there. There's one scene where we're all together and we're all like pretending to be drunk and having a party and all just, and it was the most fun. I had that whole week and we laughed, and I still talk to most of those guys today. And it was just such a fun experience. And so that made me want to do it more. So I do it whenever the opportunity arises. Like I said, I haven't done it much in the last couple of years. Probably I did a creep show episode.
Oh,
Actually, I did 2 creep show episodes. I'm in season 1, where they find these leeches that feed off human fat. And so I'm the before guy. They made me and this other guy look alike. Like they dyed my hair to match his and put us in the same clothes. And I go, the doctor comes in. I'm there with Dana Gould. He's the main actor in this, and we're sitting there chatting on the couch. And they come out and get me. I'm Mr. Simmons. They get me and they take me in the back. And so while I'm back there, they're giving them the spiel about how it works. And then the other me comes walking out, much, much thinner. And so I got to, so it was one day, it was fun. And then I got to go, I went back for what became the holiday special. So I'd grown a beard for something else. And so I still had this beard, and I decided to keep it. I'd never had a full beard before. And so I had this beard. And so I got cast on Doom Patrol because of the beard. So I did a thing on Doom Patrol because I liked the look. And so that we filmed that Doom Patrol, we filmed like the December 23rd was the last day we filmed.
Oh, wow.
And so we cut around to, we were supposed to go back. And so I kept the beard for a little while. And I'm feeling like, okay, beard's got to go. I'm in the bathroom with the clippers, and the phone rings. I set the clippers down, and it was the creep show casting going, "Do you still have the beard?" I'm like, "Yes, we need Santas." I'm like, "Okay." So we go to film this Santa bit on Thursday. We're outside. It's Atlanta. It's hot. It was like, yeah, it was as hot. And so we're doing all this running. They made it look like it was winter. I mean, snow and ice everywhere. We're doing all this running. There's like 20 Santas. We're carrying swords and axes. And so we're filming the stuff that we're filming is what you see through the video camera, the security cameras.
Right.
We were supposed to come back on Monday and film the fight scenes because we break into this thing and fight these monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was on Thursday. On Friday, the quarantine went into effect.
Because of course it did.
Of course it did. So I never got to actually go back and do the fights. They use stunt people, and but that was fun. So I had a blast doing that. And then The only thing I've done this year, um, I stumbled into by accident. I live about 50 miles outside of Atlanta in a fairly small town, and I noticed a film set. You know, there's or not a set, film, the campers, the trailers, and the base camp. I noticed it, and I'm like, wonder what they're filming here. So I go and I look it up, and I say, oh, they're filming this show with John Travolta uh, and oh, I'm blanking on the other guy's name. Anyways, and so they're filming this here, and I'm like, oh, cool. I haven't seen any calls, but I saw this one thing, and I was like, oh, there's their email. So I emailed the casting director in LA
Mm-hmm.
and said, hey, just to let you know, here's who I am. Here's what I do. I live 5 minutes from base camp. If you need somebody, please consider me. And so 2 weeks later, she goes, you want to play a fry cook? And I'm like, sure. So I got to go play a fry cook for a day. So that was fun. I didn't have any dialogue or anything, but I do a lot of it's a lot of stuff of me in there. I guess they did a bunch of it so they can intercut it through the various scenes. And I got to cook for the I'm cooking real food, and so cast and crew started going, hey, we heard there are burgers. And so Travolta wasn't there the day, but the villain was. Stephen Dorff plays the villain. So I was like, so I cooked him a hamburger, and so I got to take a picture with him. That was nice. And so it's fun. It's make believe for a day. It's weird. I mean, I was in a kitchen. We were in a real restaurant, and so, but they had to make me look sweaty. And I'm like, you turn these heaters, these
turn on the griddle. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and I'll start sweating for real. But they had to fake it, and so it was fun. I just had it's just a fun experience. It's good to kill a day. I've done a few where I've spent a week or so, but I mean, most of the time it's a day here, a day there, and it's fun, and it gets me out of my routine. It's a break from writing. It's just get out of the house. You meet very interesting people. I've actually, it's actually helped in the writing because I was on. Kevin Bacon had this show called The Following. I don't know if you remember that several years back. Excuse me, and they filmed the pilot here in Atlanta, and I played an FBI agent, and so I'm running around for 3 days, and
that's kind of awesome considering what you write. So.
Yeah, the suit, the tie, and so the last day the first 2 days we were filming in it was a grocery store that had been converted to base camp or to their office. The third day, they have tracked down a suspect, and we're going to go to his house. And so they grabbed me and 2 other guys and said, okay, you guys, for continuity's sake, you guys are coming with us, which is funny because almost everything I did got cut out of that. So we go and we film in this neighborhood. And while we were there, a real life FBI agent showed up as a consultant.
Oh,
so at one,
they were going to go knocking on somebody's door.
No, he was a consultant for the show. And at one point when we weren't doing anything, because acting is a lot of hurry up and wait. There's a lot of standing around. So he was over there by himself. So I went up and I introduced myself and I said, hey, I write novels. I wrote this novel about an FBI agent and I'm working on the sequel. I would love to see, to talk to you, to ask you some questions. And he goes, okay. He says, well, there's a process. So he gives me his card. He said, contact the person on here. They're going to background check you. They're going to make sure you're blah, 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 and then if they say it's okay, then we'll make an appointment. You can come down to the office. We'll spend an hour. We'll, have it done. Like, okay. So I did that. And I remember I was at a convention. This is one of those where I do remember, I don't remember the year, but I remember where I was. I was in Memphis at the Mid-South Con?
Yeah, I think that's
Mid-South Con of Memphis. When the phone rings and it's just, her name was Agent Birdsong of the FBI, which is like the coolest name. And so I chatted with her for a bit, and she says, we're going to give you an hour. He's going to contact you and make an appointment. Blah, blah. Okay, no problem. So we make the appointment. I go down. I mean, it's an office building. It's not, fancy, but I learned a lot. And he gave me a bunch of literature, took me on a tour.
Oh, cool.
the FBI has a trophy room like Batman does, which is really cool. Where it's like, they have to put bombs back together. So
Right.
there's, cases full of bombs put back together and all these various whatnots. And so he goes, okay, well, here's some generic FBI information. He says, do you have any specific questions? So I start telling him about the story. And I said, well, book one ends with, and I guess this is a spoiler for my, 2005 release. So, but at the end of it, he gets shot. So I'm, after we're going to deal with the aftermath of him getting shot. And he goes, oh, cool. Let me tell you this story about the time I got shot. And we go into and it's a fascinating, and a lot of it ends up in the sequel
Oh, that's
of
so
my book.
cool.
How it happened, what happens when it happens. So all that was cool. So I actually ended up spending like all day with the FBI. It was so much fun. And I learned a lot. And so, yeah, that got me on the research is fun topic. So I've spent time with cops, firefighters, doctors, nurses. Before the pandemic happened, I was scheduled to hang out with a medical examiner. So we've had to postpone that, but eventually it'll happen. I spent time talking with a Secret Service agent. Just wonderful bits and pieces where people love to talk about their jobs.
Yeah.
And so I've learned a lot of that personal experience, because the way people talk about their job informs it more than just me seeing it on TV or me reading about it.
Right.
I can kind of get their insights into it.
Yeah. My brother's a cop. And so, whenever I have cop type questions, I always go to him because, what we see on TV shows isn't accurate, but, it's accurate in some ways and not accurate in others. And we don't always know. Right. So like, I always go to my brother, to tell me about, because he did all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to go into what he did, but he did all kinds of stuff. And
yeah, I have a writer friend who is a retired LAPD investigator. So I go to him, especially with how to write stuff, because, we have to take a license sometimes to tell a story. But I also have a friend who's a judge, and I called her recently because I'm working on a book. And I was like, okay, I need this to happen. What would be the plausible reason that they would do this?
Yes.
And she gave me reasons, which kind of changed, I changed some things to make that happen. But at least now I have a plausible reason for it to happen.
Yes.
And so, finding people that know that you can reach out to, and, because people love to tell you about their jobs. I mean, obviously we're doing it right now.
Right. We're thinking that's so meta.
But it's fun, and they love that. I've learned some extremely interesting things. I have a list of like things I want, like upcoming plots that I have, like that I haven't got to yet. That I'm like, okay, when I do this one, I need to go talk to someone over here, and so try to do it closer to so it's fresh in my mind.
Right. That makes
sense. So that stuff is fun. I'm sure you do similar things. You reach out and you talk to other people. You get to meet other people. Certainly, other writers are also great. Because we all have certain types of information we've come by.
We all have people in our lives who do certain things. Yeah. So there's actually a question from Ryan about one of your characters.
Hey, that's the character I was just talking about. I've got one in the pipeline for it. Yes. Tom Meyers is a sheriff of my fictional town, Somerville. You can see behind me here the Such a Night cover. That's book 2. The first book was called In the Wind. Sheriff Meyers originally was a 3rd tier character in Evil Ways, so which is there. It's hard to do this backwards.
I know. So, I do that all the time. I'm like, no, wait. This.
So I invented this town and county for Evil Ways because it's kind of based on where I live, but I wanted things that aren't here. So I invented my own town, told this story. He was the sheriff in that town. He's not the star, but he's in it. And I was like, okay, I'll never write this town or these secondary characters again. And so then I was doing a novel called Deadly Games, which takes place partly in Atlanta, but at a certain point in the book, they have to go outside to a rural area. And so I'm like, hey, You created a town. Just
I have
use
this
that.
town right here doing
Yeah.
nothing.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll use the town, but I won't use any of the characters. I'll just use the town. And as I'm writing this story, there's this little voice in the back of my head. It's like, wouldn't this be the time you'd call the cops? And that just kept, things kept happening in the story. It's like this little voice, like, yeah, really, someone would have called the cops by now. And so they end up in that story.
Mm-hmm.
I also gave them a little, short 1-chapter thing in the sequel. But the character they wouldn't leave me alone. They just kept reminding me they were there. But I didn't have a story that fit, that was good for him to be his story. And it took several years, but eventually, and I came to him and says, okay, finally, you've got a story. And that story became In the Wind. And I put it out. It did surprisingly well. I was very impressed. I did the second book. I'm working on the third book now. And I've got plots loosely plotted for like the next 3 after that.
Ooh, so Tom Meyers has a future.
Yes. So the sheriff, I did this little time jump because it has been a little while. So the town and county have changed. There's been a lot of expansion and growth, businesses coming in, things like that. And so, so he's dealing with all these new problems. And so working the small town politics in addition to the crime. And it's fun. I'm having a ball doing it. Again, we get to write off those trips because
that's right.
we ride around town and go, hey, I can kill somebody here. So they're fun. I'm a big crime fiction fan, so I really love writing crime fiction, and it's fun. And so I'm working on book 3 now. Book 3, the inciting incident is actually based on a real incident that happened here in town.
Oh,
there was a plane crash here in town. We have a small airport. Somehow this plane missed the airport and hit a storage unit facility, which is right next to the airport.
Oh,
but it was such a small plane, like there was no damage. Like it hit, and the plane actually just flipped over. Because we went and looked.
Of course you did.
Of course we did. So that's the inciting incident. Only in mine, the unit gets damaged and they find something inside of it, which kicks our story off. So playing with stuff like that, that truth is stranger than fiction sometimes helps with these things. So
yes. Excellent.
Oh, I went way off field there. Sorry. I had to,
no, the question was what's next for Tom Meyers, and you're talking about the next, you have a book, so you've got plots for the next few books. I think
so we're they're fun, and because this in Somerville, the town I created and the county I created, I ended up have used them more because that's where Snow lives.
It's also really convenient though, isn't it? Having a town that you have created is super convenient, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So he still lives there, but he grew up there. But I haven't really crossed the main characters over much yet. I mean, other than Sheriff Meyers first appeared in Evil Ways,
right?
But I haven't in the Wind, Mac, who is a secondary character in the Snow books, appears. But I haven't had Snow crossover yet or anything. But I keep threatening one of these days I'm going to do this big crossover because I do have characters that can and have, I have a U.S. Marshal that has appeared in the first Sheriff Meyers book and the second the Evil Intent novel. We'll see him again. Things like that. I invented I have a fictional president of the United States that I can use through them. Things like that, and his people under him. So there's a lot of these characters that can be interchangeable. It's like the Bobby literary universe.
It's the Bobbyverse.
So and so I can do stuff like that, but I don't want to force it. I don't want to force Snow to meet Sheriff Meyers or anything like that.
It has to feel organic.
Exactly. So like having Mac show up in the Wind worked. There was a reason for it. The FBI needed to be there. And since he was in town visiting his folks, he got the call because he's there. So it worked. But I figure one day it'll happen. There will be some kind of crossover, but
There's literally no way you can avoid it. There's just
exactly.
not.
Right. But I'm waiting for the characters to tell me it's the right time.
There should be something. There should be some crime at Dragon Con and at a big convention that is in downtown Atlanta that takes up 5 hotels.
Yes. I have had an idea in my head for years about a murder at a big convention like that, but
Yes.
I just haven't found the right place for it. So.
I understand. I get it. So speaking of cons, there's a question from Madeline. Does that mean you'll be at Multiverse, Bobby?
I am not a guest at Multiverse. I may pop down for one day just to visit and say hi. So I'm not on any of the programming, but I might just be there and walking around.
We would love to see you there.
It would be fun. I love the show. It's a great show.
It is.
And so I will probably come down just one day, and so I can catch up and see everybody. And
yes, because there are an awful lot of us there.
Yeah, it's very weird doing a show though after doing
that you're not in.
You're not working. You don't know what to do with yourself because in my head I did one. A buddy of mine and I over the weekend went down to Joe Lanta for one day, which is the GI Joe convention, and we were just there a few hours. But even in just that short a span of time, I kept thinking I gotta get back to my table. Oh wait, I don't have one. So yeah, 60,000 suspects. Someone in costume with a real gun that looks like a fake gun.
Yep.
How do you catch them?
Yep.
So.
Oh yeah, the Go Indie Now is doing this weekend in Indies at Multiverse. So yeah, that would be really cool.
Very nice.
Really cool. So yeah, Multiverse is the weekend of October 15th here in Atlanta, Georgia. It is it's like Dragon Con, but then littler.
Yes, much smaller. Yeah. October's pretty busy. I've got a Monsterama Junior is the 8th. The Atlanta Comic Convention one day show is the 9th. And I'm in Chattanooga on the 22nd and 23rd for the Chattanooga Comic Con, which is their first year.
You're gonna be busy.
Yep.
I'm doing
getting back into my old ways.
Yes, clearly. All right, I'm doing a Next Chapter Con up in Dalton, which is
I've done that one before. I'm not doing it this year, but I have done that one before.
Oh, yeah, this is my first year doing it, so I'm not really sure. I have no idea what to expect. They just actually emailed saying, we've got these panels that we have interest in putting people on, so I'm going to write them back and see how that goes.
It's a fun show. I've done it before and I've enjoyed it. It's
excellent. Yay. So you were on a panel. I think you were on the panel. I was reading an article that okay. So at Dragon Con, didn't you do a panel where you guys made stuff up?
The xenobiology, xenoarchaeology.
Yes, I think. Yes, I heard about it on the Writing Tribe, one of the calls from someone else who was on it. And then when I was, doing research on you for stuff I didn't know, I came across somebody did a write-up of it, and it looked hilarious. Can you give us a short little idea of what that was like? Because that sounded so fun.
I had no idea.
I don't think any of the guests had any idea.
I had no idea what was going on.
So what was it? So what was the premise of
Jody? It was Jody Lynn Nye's panel. She was the moderator, and there were 5 of us at the table. And Jody gets up and she talks about we are all playing a role. We are playing xenoarchaeologists, and this is like a symposium. So there's a lot of, I hate to disagree with my learned colleague, but so we were doing that a lot. And so Jody would get up and she'd say, well, now we excavated the ruins on the planet, blah, 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 blah. And she would pull an item out of a box. Like the first one is a paint roller. And she goes into what they think it is. And it's this, it's not anything but a paint roller, And so then she hands it to me, and I said, well, I respectfully disagree. I've seen this before. This is actually, and then you just improv.
Clearly, it's like from The Little Mermaid, where she's picks up things like a fork and stuff, and they don't know what they are.
Yeah. And so we started playing off of each other, or would pick up and go, Well, my colleague is only half right. This part is this, but so we would start playing off each other and back and forth, and they were, just silly items. One was a cat dish full of candy. One was a Garfield phone. One was this knit stocking looking monster. I mean, it was just hilarious. And my favorite was there was this one of those bubble wrap mailers, but the bubble mailers. Yeah. But it was silver. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. This was unearthed in the tomb of King Jiffy the First. And it was just and so we just kept playing and adding and we laughed a lot. It was hilarious. So yeah, just I hope someone recorded it. I don't know if they did, but we had a ball. And it was
hilarious.
Yeah. And like you said, I know at least two of us had no idea what was going on.
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure, like, I know at least 3 people who were on that panel, and I don't think any of them knew what was happening.
Yeah, because it really was just, I was like, I don't have any idea what's going on here. And I was first. I was right next to Jody. So the first one we did, I'm first, and I have no idea, what we're doing. And so I figured it out. But I got to say, Esther Friesner was next to me, and she's apparently done this before.
But she's also hilarious just in her own right.
Oh my God, she was, and she would find a way to work into almost every one of hers that I think this is used for sacrifice. and we would just all die laughing. She was
hilarious. And those of you who don't know Esther, she is an older woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you don't necessarily think of these things coming from her unless you know her. Mm-hmm. So
that was the first time I had met her. So, but yeah, she was hilarious. She was absolutely hilarious, and everybody was coming up with really funny things. And the brilliance of it too was everybody came at it from a different angle, which I thought was really good. But it was very funny. We had a ball, and like I said, once I knew what was going on.
You were all in, man. Yeah. All in.
And Jody was a fantastic moderator. She would get the ball rolling, and like I said, she had a box full of stuff, and she would just reach in and grab something, and it was great.
Oh, that's fabulous! I feel like I want to suggest that for one of the panels next year for Multiverse. Yeah. Not on my track necessarily, but on.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. Someone else was telling me they did a panel at Dragon Con that was very same thing, improv, but it wasn't this panel, but there was something else that was improv where they were, I can't remember what it is now. Sorry, you lose a lot of brain cells at Dragon Con.
For real. For real. And I don't have a whole lot to spare these days. Yeah.
I don't think I'm not rested yet. And it was, there's a week between them now,
Yes. It took me most of last week to kind of get back into norm,
Well, usually I take at least one day off. I take Tuesday off usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes Tuesday and Wednesday.
Some years, man. Some years.
Yeah, but this year I came home and I had 2 books that I had to edit that both came in right before I went to Dragon. And then my dad had some health issues. We had to go to the emergency room on Wednesday. Oof. And so it's been one thing after another. It's like, so I didn't get that rest that I so desperately need after after Dragon Con. So it's and every year I get a little older. I need more rest every year.
This year was really a delineation for me because I did not bounce back like I usually do. So, and I know part of that also is the last couple of years have taken a toll. But yeah, this year was rough bouncing back, man.
I will say though, having the mask on for 5 days, I came home with my voice intact, which usually does not happen.
Right.
And I didn't come home with con crud.
Me neither.
So yay. And I didn't get COVID, so that's good too. I've had that once. I don't need it again.
So far, I have lucked out, and I have not had it, as far as I know. Knock on wood.
Yeah, my dad caught it, and I caught it from him while taking care of him, and it laid me up for about 3 weeks. I was laid up,
Yeah.
And then for like a week after I was better, I still had that kind of brain fog for about a week and a half.
Yeah.
And then once that cleared up, I was okay. But I stayed, I was in bed for almost 3.5 weeks. It was awful.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm getting the notice that we've overtalked our time, as is going to be usual for this. It's
I was
always
going to
usual.
say, I can do 2 hours.
Right,
Easy.
right. But let everybody know how to find you. I mean, there'll be links below, but just let us know how to find you.
Well, I have BobbyNash.com as my website. There's links to everything there, but I'm author Bobby Nash is my author page on Facebook. I'm at Bobby Nash on Twitter. I'm Bobby Nash Writes on Instagram.
I'm sensing a theme.
Yes. They used to all be the same, but over the years, you get hacked or you have to change something. And yes, my Bobby Nash Instagram was hacked years ago. And so I have a Patreon page. It's Patreon/Bobby Nash. I'm all over everything. So, excuse me, I haven't made the leap to things like TikTok or anything yet, just because there's only so many hours in the day.
For real. For real.
But I'm easy to find. If you have questions that we didn't get to, because I know we babbled a bit, feel free to hit me up on any of the social medias, and I'll answer them if I can. That's
what the show's about. It's about babbling. So, Bobby, what time is it?
It is always time to go indie now.
Yeah.